Welcome back. Let's do part two and wrap everything up. All right, so the other part that goes with motivation, obviously we're going to talk about hunger. So we're going to talk about like what motivates us to eat, and along with that, we're going to talk about eating disorders as well. So for hunger, which hopefully you've seen in your textbook, what changes when someone is underfed? The most famous study that was done with this is Ansel Keys. He took 36 men and fed them a diet that was below their normal caloric intake. They obviously agreed to this knowing that during this study they would be hungry the whole time they participated in the study. And he wanted to collect information on the men's behavior if they were consistently hungry. And what changed were the men only thought about food. They literally did not think about anything else. They lost interest in everything but food. They lost interest in sex. They lost interest in any kind of hobbies. If they watched TV, the only thing they paid attention to were like what the characters were eating. The only conversations they had with each other were about food. So bottom line, food is the greatest motivator for human behavior if people do not have it. There's POW stories, prisoner of war stories that obviously focus on that. My great-grandfather was a POW in World War I, and he had, I never got to meet him, but the story that he told my mother when she was growing up was the same thing, how they were only fed a tiny, tiny little piece of bread a day to keep them alive. And he watched one man hide the bread in his shirt pocket because he wanted to eat when he woke up because he was so tired of waking up and being hungry. So he hid his bread in his shirt pocket and he went to sleep, and obviously someone stole it from him and ate it for themselves. And when he woke up, he just wept and wept and wept and cried because he didn't have that food, didn't have that bread. North Korea is a excellent example. They withhold food from their population to control human behavior. If you are interested in the Hunger Games, we all think that that's a crazy story, but quite frankly, if you withhold food from people, I could see that being reality. But all you can think of is food when you are hungry. So it's the greatest motivator for human behavior. Okay. Physiology of hunger, like why are we hungry? So we're going to go through multiple reasons of why our bodies feel hunger, like the science behind it. Why are you hungry? One of the reasons that you are hungry is because your stomach contracts, and your stomach contracts when it is empty and awaiting food. And the study that was done with this was a psychologist whose last name was Washburn. I forget his first name because all I can think of is the band teacher. But the Washburn study that was done where he swallowed a balloon and they inflated it and deflated it. And he pressed a button every time that he felt hunger. And bottom line, when the stomach contracted, he felt hunger. So the contractions of the stomach are one of the reasons that we feel hunger, which is not done by a balloon in our body, but is done naturally. Your stomach contracts when it's getting ready to accept or prepare food. Glucose is one of the biggest reasons that we experience hunger. Glucose, bottom line, means sugar, and it circulates in your blood, and it's your source of energy. So like you need glucose to have energy. That's why if you are a runner, you eat pasta the night before a race because pasta is full of glucose, and so your body has energy to burn off of. If your glucose drops, you experience hunger. So if your glucose drops, if you have low glucose levels, you experience hunger, which makes sense because if you have low glucose, you don't have energy to burn. So your body wants energy. So it gives you the sensation of hunger. So you'll feed it, and so it will get more glucose to burn. Okay. There's a lot of fad diets out there that the whole point of the diet is to stabilize your glucose level by working with your insulin. To give you an example, anything that makes your glucose spike, ultimately the spike will fall and then you'll be hungry again. So things like pancakes. To give you an example, I love Cracker Barrel peach pancakes. It's like one of my favorite treats to myself. But I can go and eat an entire plate full of Cracker Barrel peach pancakes, and by the time I make it home, I'm hungry. And it's not because I'm hungry, it's because if I eat a whole plate of peach pancakes, my glucose just went through the roof, and by the time I make it home, it's dropped because it makes it spike. Pancakes and sugary peaches will make it spike and then drop, and so your body gets the sensation of hunger from the drop in the glucose. All right, your hypothalamus. Do you remember we call this our pleasure center or our reward center? There are two centers that control eating in your hypothalamus, your lateral and your ventromedial. Okay, I want you to think of it this way. Lateral means side, right? Like a lateral throw or a lateral pass means side. Your lateral hypothalamus is on the sides of your hypothalamus. If you stimulate that lateral hypothalamus, it will make you hungry. If we destroy it, it takes away all interest in your food. And the reason why it does this, the blood sugar levels drop the lateral. So it puts out, if your blood sugar levels drop, if your blood sugar levels drop, your lateral hypothalamus puts out orexin. And orexin is a hormone that triggers the feeling of hunger. Okay, so this is like all part of like how crazy your body works. So if your blood sugar level drops, automatically your hypothalamus puts out, your lateral hypothalamus will put out a hormone to make you eat. Okay, so if we stimulate it, we bring it on. We bring on the hunger. Your ventromedial hypothalamus, it depresses your hunger. So if you stimulate it, you stop eating. And if we destroy it, you will eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. This is a rat whose ventromedial hypothalamus is destroyed, and you can see it's like huge because it doesn't understand to stop eating. Okay. Other reasons of why we're hungry: ghrelin. When your stomach is empty, it secretes a hormone to let your body know that your stomach's empty and it needs more food. There's PYY, which is the digestive hormone. There's leptin. So like bottom line, PYY is the fullness hormone. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone. So you have all these hormones in your body on top of everything else that's going on that tell you to eat. Okay. People who suffer severe obesity have what we call gastric bypass surgery. And everyone thinks that gastric bypass is like making your stomach smaller. And that's not actually what it does. It seals off part of your stomach so that your stomach produces less ghrelin. And if it produces less ghrelin, it secretes less of the hormone of ghrelin, then your appetite will lessen. So you'll eat less. And so you'll lose weight. Okay. Set point, hopefully you've heard, set point is something that is normally caused by heredity, and this is like your body is comfortable at a particular weight. This is a lot of times too why when people lose weight, maybe they'll keep it off for like a month or 2 months or 3 months, but then they creep back up to the weight that they were previously. And that's because your body is comfortable at a set point that normally does come from heredity. So that's why too, once you guys grow up into your adult bodies, you kind of look like your parents. And the reason why is because it's genetics. Like that's heredity, what you look like. Obviously you can dodge certain habits that your parents have that maybe you won't. And that can change it, but a lot of families, look similar because of that. Your basal metabolic rate is your metabolism. So we all have different metabolisms, and your metabolism is how many calories are you burning when your body's at a resting point. So you all know people who, like my husband's best friend, he's a noodle. That's what I call him, a noodle. And he eats the worst diet. Like literally, there are days that he'll have 2 Chick-fil-A milkshakes in a day, and he is a noodle. He's like this big around. His metabolism is like a nuclear power plant. Like anything that he eats, he just can't put fat on his body, versus other people who have very, very, very slow metabolisms, where anything that they eat automatically like will stay in their system and stay on their body. So the older you are, the slower your metabolism gets too. Amnesia, going with the psychology of hunger, part of knowing when to eat is the memory of your last meal. And so we have done studies where we fed amnesia patients back-to-back meals, like 30 minutes apart, and they've eaten both of them, like all of the food. So we know that, even though their stomach should be full and the hormone, the digestive hormones being released, which should tell them that they're full, without a memory of their last meal, they're willing to eat the next. So that's another part of why we're hungry. Taste preferences, once again, we are genetically predisposed to like sweet and salty foods because that kept your ancestors alive, because they had to store fat and calories because food was not readily available. We all experience neophobia, which is a fear of new foods, which is also passed down from evolution. You should have a fear of new foods because you don't know if that food's going to kill you or not. and adaptive taste preferences, like these kids are eating whale blubber, who are native Alaskans, and these guys are eating toasted fire ants. Don't think either anybody in this class eats those two delicacies, because that's not adaptive in your taste preferences. So very quickly, we got 3 eating disorders, which you all know about from your health class: anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. Anorexia is a 15% drop or more in your normal weight. This normally affects adolescent females, not always. It can affect both genders and all ages, but that's where we see the most cases. And bulimia nervosa, you have to have overeating followed by a removal of the calories in some way. So whether that's vomiting, whether that's laxative use, whether that's fasting, whether it's excessive exercise, like bulimia nervosa would be, you eat a 400 calorie meal and then you go to the gym and you burn off 500 calories. That goes with bulimia. Okay. Bulimia is easier to hide because you actually stay in like normal weight range. Anorexia, you are very, very thin. And then binge eating disorder goes with bulimia nervosa because that's, part of it. You binge eat and then try to rid yourself of the calories. Okay. Bulimia can be passed down from mother to daughter. Anorexia is common in competitive, high-achieving families. And culture affects this. Like in Africa, poor people are thin. So you don't want to be thin. You want to be plump because that shows that you have money. Western cultures is where we have this idea that like 90 pounds is attractive. So people want to have, very, very skinny body types. Chart for obesity, you've seen these like BMI, stuff like that, yada, yada. There you go. Please know we do have weight discrimination in this country. And in Western cultures, bottom line, like women are less likely to be hired if they are overweight. So this is within normal weight range. This is overweight range and the willingness of someone to hire them. Males are also weight discriminated against too, but not as heavily as females. Fat cells in the body, once you are obese, the fat cells never go back to normal. And that's why once you are obese and you lose weight, it is very, very easy to gain all of that weight back. And we have a big problem in this country of people not understanding like realistic goals of weight loss. All right, very quickly, sexual motivation, cover that very quickly. The sexual response cycle, there are 4 phases, much like the firing of a neuron. You have the excitement phase, the plateau phase, the orgasm, and the resolution phase. The resolution phase is the refractory period. You cannot have back-to-back orgasms. You have to have a reset point, much like we talked about with neurons. Like, remember, neurons have to go back to a resting state before they fire again. That's the same thing with the sexual response cycle. Our sex hormones are estrogen and testosterone. The effects of the hormones, once you develop sexual characteristics, which are like things like armpit hair, we talked about like secondary sexual characteristics, things that you're not born with, things that come when you hit puberty, that's what's going to activate sexual behavior. That's why you have sexually active teenagers and not sexually active 6-year-olds, hopefully. What media does to our expectations about sex. This is like a huge thing, today, that pornography gives people completely unrealistic goals and makes people less pleased with their partners. And it's not just pornography. Chick flicks do this too. I always use The Notebook as an example because people think that that's like realistic for their partner to wait on them for 8 years while they go off and get engaged to another man. And no, it's not real. Also, body types, like that's unrealistic. This is unrealistic. I know y'all aren't Britney Spears people anymore, but this was a huge deal because this was the first photo cover of a magazine that came out that she was airbrushed. And it was like a huge scandal because people need to realize that, they need to be satisfied with their partners, that stuff that you see is not real. Teen pregnancy comes in with this too. Please read through that in your textbook. Ignorance does not mean stupidity. Ignorance means not knowing how pregnancy happens. But these are all of the reasons why teen pregnancy happens. And here is why teen abstinence happens. What we see that there's a correlation. Remember, correlation does not mean causation. There are 2 kinds of sexual orientation, homosexual and heterosexual. And you have that in there. And then the last thing is the need to belong, and what we will do in order to belong, which is once again on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is one of the biggest human motivators. We want to belong to a group. All right, thanks.